You actually have not a whole lot of film credit, but you've done a ton of stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I've always been a martial artist, and I was recruited from a karate tournament, so I was competing in a karate tournament when they discovered me, not auditioning for the part. I did compete a lot, and I was hoping to get into movies, but I didn't really know how to do it, so I was competing, and the director and his assistant approached me at a tournament. He said, "How'd you like to be in a movie?" That's how I got into the karate. And then in summer of '83, I trained with all the Cobra Kai guys in the summer, and then we filmed. And that was the only movie project I did for 25 years. And then since then, I've been pulled into other small projects. But yeah, I've been teaching and training karate the whole time. And that's why in 2012 I achieved a 10th degree. But yeah, not really an actor, so can't use that in my credits.
But definitely had an influence.
It's amazing the influence. I mean, a lot of people don't know that I was the one who also doubled for Pat Maria on the beach doing the crane kick. And that wasn't even published anywhere until the 20-year anniversary of Deacon. They were talking about it. They said, John and Pat said, "Oh yeah, there's Darryl. He did the crane kick for me. Made me look really good." And then I said, finally, I could prove that was me. But a lot of people thought it was Pat. Some people thought it was Maria who did the other stunts for Pat Maria. But yeah, that was that. Everybody knows the crane kick.
Yes. And I had read that it didn't have the same arm movements. Did that get added, or how much embellishment did they do for the movie?
So the way it was written in the script was he stands up with one leg because the kid is going to get his knee injured, so he has to be able to stay on one leg. Arms outstretched to the side, and they called it. They were telling me it's called a crane kick. This is the writer and the director, and I said, "Why would you ever do that?" But you only argue with the director one time, and I said, "Okay, well, whatever you want me to do." So yeah, we started from here, and then we did the kick, and I showed them how the kick worked, and then they said, "Okay, well, you got to do something with your hands." So I said, "Okay, we're going to start like this," which is actually a Wing Chun. So we start like this with the foot up, what we call it, the crane stance, and then we bring it up. Excuse me, the cat stance, and then we bring the arms up like this and down, and then up and do the kick. So that's where it all came from.
Nice. You, Sean, have dabbled in the world of soap operas, which my dad was, before he passed away, was huge with soap operas. How did that relate to the Karate Kid or martial arts in movies, which is a very different experience?
Well, after I had done the Karate Kid 3, it came out in 1989, I did some other things, and then in 1992 I joined the cast of General Hospital, and it was to replace an existing character. And a dear friend of mine who was playing a character on General Hospital, they needed to find this actor to play his brother. And so Steve Burton, who played the other character, he and I had an incredible resemblance. And so he spoke with the producers and said, "Look, I think I got a guy that would be really good for this." So they brought me into screen test, and I got the role, and then started my my long career with daytime television. So I did General Hospital from 1992 to about 1997. In 2000, I began working as Deacon Sharp on The Bold and the Beautiful, and I've played that role off and on since 2000. I'm currently on The Bold and the Beautiful. I also played Deacon Sharp on The Young and the Restless, and I also did a stint on a show called Sunset Beach. So I've worked in daytime television off and on since 1992.
A little bit more than dabble.
Yeah, a little more than dabble.
So, is it the same Deacon Sharp between the different?
Yeah, it's the same guy. And, it's a fairly short list of actors who have been able to play the same character on different shows. And it's a very, very short list of characters who have been the only actor to play one character. And I'm the only actor that's ever played Deacon Sharp. So, daytime has a very special place in my heart.
And I have a little trivia for that, Bill, that I'm like the only actor, quote unquote, that plays myself in a fictional movie. Because they threw my real name in Karate Kid.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, okay, it's really cool. Trivia.
Oh, that is so cool. You wrote a book as well.
I did. I wrote a book. It's called Way of the Cobra. And this is my third book. My last book, Success Factor X, became an Amazon new release bestseller. And I wrote this book because I found myself in a place a couple years ago, and I think everybody maybe can relate. I had had some fairly big successes in my life. I had had a couple of very epic failures. And I was in a place where I was looking in the mirror saying, okay, what's next? What's chapter 2? And I realized I needed to start doing some things very differently, very quickly. And I did. I made some huge changes in my life, and I started having some incredible results. And I decided that I wanted to put this into a book and share these results with other people. Originally, the book had a different title, and then with the complete world phenomenon that Cobra Kai has become, coupled with the fact that I'm a character in the Karate Kid universe, I figured let's tailor the book a little bit to cater to that fan base, and I did, and it's been a huge success. So the book is, as I said, a motivational self-help book where I'm the sensei, you're a student in my dojo, and COBRA is an acronym formed from the words character, optimization, balance, respect, and abundance. And these are the battle-tested strategies and philosophy that I use in my life to achieve some of the success that I've achieved. And I always say, before you think I'm, levitating on the top of some mountain contemplating my navel, it's because I've made every mistake in this book a dozen times over. And I figured if I can help some people avoid some of the pitfalls, that would be great. And the tagline for the book is Unleash Your Inner Badass. So I do have, the book has been almost sold out. I do have a handful of copies over at my table, and we're going to be launching the audiobook in about a week, which I read myself. It also has bonus material that's not in the book, and Master Vidal was gracious enough to create the foreword to the book, which, by the way, is spelled F-O-R-E-W-A-R-D, not F-O-R-W-A-R-D. So you learn something all the time.
And just if you don't mind, not to top of Sean, I also am an author.
Yes.
I have several books. They're all on Amazon. Most of my books are in the subject of education technology, which is my full-time job. But I also have a novel, and I recently wrote a book, which is a memoir about a musician who played with Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra. Yeah, so it's a memoir, and it's been picked up by an indie producer, and I'm seeing if Sean can play Elvis for me.
Thank you very much.
My mom would love that.
I'd like a peanut butter and nanner sandwich, please. They won't let my wife in at security, so sorry, that's what I'm dealing with. I'm in the auditorium. Just ask. Sorry about that. Top floor.
See, and it's true for all of us. It's the spouse that dictates what happens.
Absolutely. The right one will make you, the wrong one will break you.
You mentioned educational technology.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that?
Since, like I said, I'm a martial artist, which I do part-time. And so the last 25 years, I've been working as a consultant for school districts. Technology.
I'm going to have to talk with you more because I do IT for suburban schools. That's a small district about an hour south of here. But you're not here for me. You're here for them.
Yeah,
So,
let's talk later because
let's-
people want to talk about that, but yeah.
No. Let's open it up to some Q&A. Do you guys have any questions?
For Sean,
Yep.
Yes, sir.
the Karate Kid 3, what was your favorite line?
What was my favorite line from Karate Kid 3? Your karate's a joke. It's kind of become my tagline. People seem to love it.
And do you practice any kind of martial arts?
You know, I've before I did Karate Kid 3, I had studied Shotokan karate for several years, and throughout my life, at different periods, off and on, I've studied different martial arts. So I have kind of a smattering of different martial arts, the basics. I'm not a black belt. I actually have been fortunate enough to train with Darryl. We're doing some training this morning, and he's also taught me Filipino stick and knife fighting we've worked on. So, you know, martial arts is something that has always been very near and dear to my heart. And I think one of the things that I love about martial arts is, of course, the physical aspect of it is very important, but there's also an emotional, spiritual aspect to martial arts where it doesn't matter if you're, you know, able to do triple turns in the air, or if you're, you know, somebody that's 75 years old and has bad knees, you know, you can still carry the spirit of martial arts with you into everything you do.
And just to add on to what Sean said, because I think it's such a dichotomy, his character in Karate Kid 3, Barnes, and the attitude, you know, the Cobra Kai attitude that he possesses and inflicts upon Ralph. But then, having known Sean for what, 5-7 years now that we've done stuff together, he really does exude the attitude of a true martial artist, which is, you know, perseverance, dedication, and that is an important factor in his book. So when I read the book, I really was inspired by the stories that challenges that he faced in his life, and so in 2019, I had Sean inducted into the Masters Hall of Fame of martial arts. So you know, even though he said he's not a black belt, I think he represents, you know, a huge contribution to martial arts and, you know, Karate Kid.
That was an incredible honor for me. It really was.
So, it's a great example. So thank you. Yeah, strong, highly recommended book too.
There's my wife, whose security apparently has now let through. Hi, baby. So we have any other questions? Don't be shy.
During Karate Kid 3, is it true that you broke your ribs during the scene when they threw you, when supposedly Mr. Miyagi threw you back into the dojo?
Well, I didn't break my ribs, and I talk about this story extensively in the book. What really happened was we were doing a stunt in the Cobra Kai dojo. It had nothing to do with martial arts. I had to stand in a stationary position and jump a couple feet and fall on the ground. Sounds simple enough, right? We did it over and over again, and we broke for Christmas, and I was having some pretty significant pain in my left thigh, which I attributed to all the karate that I was doing, but in reality, I had punctured it's called your omentum. It's a sheath of tissue that protects your intestine. And so I had been bleeding internally, and I was taking a lot of aspirin because the pain was bad. Well, aspirin exacerbated the bleeding, and so Christmas Day 1989, I found myself fighting for my life in the emergency room of Humana Sunrise Hospital. And I tell the story in the book because, you know, I had fought so hard to get into the movie, and then a month or so later, was faced with the very real prospect of not being able to finish it. And I had to will myself back into the movie. And you know, I talk about in the book how a lot of times things that we initially assign a negative connotation to, whether it's getting divorced or what happened to me, with the expansion of time, proved to be some of the most valuable things in our life. And you know, even though I've got a 12-inch scar on my abdomen, and it was one of the most terrifying moments of my life when I was told by the surgical nurse that they didn't know if they could save my life, now, with the expansion of time, has proved to be one of the best lessons I've ever had in my life, and I wouldn't change it for anything. And I didn't break my ribs. I wish I had broken my ribs. I wish it was just that.
And just again, to add on, it's a great story. He goes about it in the book. But not only did he train to do his own stunts and then recover from this injury, but as I understand it, Sean, you were given an ultimatum to be back on the set in days.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring if you think about, you know, what he just went through and then.
Yeah, there were no flowers, there was no get well card. It was be back at work in 10 days or we're gonna hire Brandon Lee. And, you know, I very quickly went from feeling sorry for myself to getting really angry and using that anger to drive and fuel me to get myself back into shape. And ultimately I wound up doing all of my own stunts in the film with the exception of one. I don't know if you remember at Mr. Miyagi's bonsai store, after we have the fight with Mr. Miyagi, the bad guys jump into a Mustang and do a donut outside and then go across the train tracks. And I said, there is no way on God's green earth, after getting back in this film, that I'm gonna get taken out by a train. You could have a stuntman do that one. Yes, sir.
With Cobra Kai being such a worldwide phenomenon, for both of you, what do you think as far as, or what have you seen as the original films are now being introduced to a younger generation that may have not seen them before? What have you seen, or what do you think about how, you know?
One of the things I think is impactful is I encourage everybody who's getting into Cobra Kai to go back and watch the first 3 movies, the trilogy, because so much, especially of season 1, it is a play, you know, and call back to a lot of those cliches. And I think that the writers did a great job of, you know, calling back, you know, things from the 80s, all these nostalgic things, and they did a great job of, you know, making light of it. And when you go back and watch Karate Kid, the movies, especially Karate Kid 1, it's a pretty funny movie. There's a lot of funny lines that, you know, come right out of the 80s, bring back some nostalgic memories.
Yeah, I think one of the most successful things that they've been able to achieve in the series is that the show caters to 2 different age demographics, which is very difficult because, you know, from being a teenager to an adult, you know, what you think is funny is not necessarily funny when you get older, references change, etc. And so, you know, you've got the younger storyline with the characters like, you know, Miguel and Robbie and the, you know, the girls, and then you've got Daniel and Johnny. And they very successfully managed to speak to both audiences and intertwine the stories. And, you know, this show could have gone wrong 100 different ways. And I think the fact that the 3 creators of the show come from a comedy background, having done Harold and Kumar and Hot Tub Time Machine, the fact that they infused it with comedy and then, you know, tipped it on its head and put forth the supposition that Daniel was actually the bully and Johnny was the guy getting bullied is just genius.
I just want to add to that because I think one of the things that if you, like you said, when you watch Karate Kid early ones, you say, you know, Daniel kind of had it coming. It would cause a lot of these issues. And then in the series, you know, Daniel is still this conflicted gentleman. You know, he's all grown up now, and he espouses, you know, the piece of Miyagi-Do, but his actions are so conflicted. You know, he wants to get rid of Cobra Kai, and they're never going to be in the valley, and he's going to get rid of them. And then Johnny's conflicts or personal demons make him, you know, a sympathetic favorite. You know, and really, you know, like Johnny, and you love his, you know, his simplistic attitude that lost in the 80s. I really like what they do.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. Do you think in the first Karate Kid movie, when after Daniel wins the tournament and Johnny's bringing the trophy and he seems to be like, you did it, do you think it originally was supposed to have a redemption arc to it?
I definitely think so. I mean, you know, Johnny had been the bully all this time, and then having been beaten fair and square. In fact, not even fair and square. Been beaten after cheating, right? It shows, I think, an epiphany for the Johnny character, and the ultimate redemption to have presented that trophy. And just as a point of trivia, if you watch that real close, that last scene I'm one of the guys that comes up and picks Ralph up.
Ah,
So you can only see it these days because, Netflix is in high definition. Hey, there I am.
we watched that.
Other questions?
Sir.
Just wondering for Sean, have you visited Atlanta, Georgia anytime?
Nice try.
I had to.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
We have a question from the side?
I just want to know what's for lunch.
That's an excellent question, honey. We're gonna address that very quickly. Yes, sir. Zach.
This question's for both of you. In the Karate Kid universe, if both of your characters had to fight in their prime tournament style, who do you think would win?
Oh boy, that's a tough one.
You hear a lot of these comparisons, who would win, and there's a huge problem with that whole scenario, is because they tend to say in real life or in.
Oh, in real life, there's no question.
In real life, I'm a 10th degree black belt, and I competed for years, and in point system, obviously, I would have to say I probably have an advantage. But based on the characters, who's to say?
I mean, Vidal won the All Valley tournament, but Barnes was actually supposed to be a 10th degree black belt who was a national champion. So, if you're just looking at the source material, I would say, based on what they set up, that you might expect that Barnes would win, but who knows?
Good question.
Yes.
Okay, so my friend here and I have some theories on Mike Barnes and Cobra Kai, and I'm just going to throw them at you. I think that Mike Barnes is Miguel's dad. He thinks that he is Tori's dad.
Interesting.
And
Glad
we're
that
going
Mike
back and
Barnes is
forth.
getting some action.
And then we also had the idea, I had the idea anyway, he thinks I'm crazy, but what if they are like brother and sister and Mike Barnes is both of their dad?
Interesting.
He said that sounded too soap opera-y.
I think it's really wonderful and funny and entertaining for me to hear all of these incredible theories. One of the best ones that I heard was, what if Mike Barnes became an anger management counselor and Johnny and Daniel were sent to him by the court?
Oh, I love that.
He's going to have to keep watching.
Oh, I will.
So obviously Cobra Kai is very big and popular, and we've seen recurring characters like Johnny, Kreese, Terry Silver come back into the franchise, and they kind of get to expand upon their story arc. Now, if Mike Barnes got that opportunity, where would you like to see that story arc continue? Because in Karate Kid 3, we see like Mike Barnes kind of a hothead, short temper, but what would you like to see, or what would you like to take?
Hopefully Mike managed to get some therapy in the last 30-some years. I think one of the great things that the guys have done is that these characters are coming back to Cobra Kai as more fully developed human beings because they've had, decades of life. It doesn't always manifest in a positive way. Terry Silver, and with some characters it does. I always felt that Mike Barnes could have gone two ways. I felt that he could have either, gone into the military or something like that and really, learned discipline and honor and come out of it a much better person, or he could have just continued down the wrong path and wound up in prison as an even worse psychopath than he was. So I'm just as eager to find out what became of Sensei Barnes as you guys are. Yes?
For both of you, what styles have you both studied in the martial arts, and do you recommend studying more than one style, or is that just kind of going crazy?
I'll start. My background is in Kempo. That's where I've been teaching and training for the past 45 years, and where I've achieved 10th degree. I also, though, teach Filipino stick fighting, and in the past, since I was such a big Bruce Lee fan, in my younger days, I boxed, wrestled, and studied Wing Chun. So those are kind of my core
I can get my ass kicked in a number of different styles. I've had, like I said, a little smattering of a lot of different things. My initial background is in Shotokan karate, where I earned a green belt, and then I went on to American kickboxing, where there aren't belts. I did that for several years, about 2 years. And I've, over the years, studied some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, some Krav Maga, and as I said, I've been fortunate enough to study a little bit with Master Vidal. All right, I think we have just a few more minutes, so is there anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I got one more question.
Yeah.
With Cobra Kai's going on right now, do you see, I know there's a lot of MMA out there, but do you see like karate making a comeback with the younger generation wanting to learn that because of the movie?
You know, Darryl and I both have a lot of friends that are in the martial arts business, and I think that they've seen a huge spike in people signing up for classes. And this same thing happened when the Karate Kid came out. I mean, people were, signing up in droves. I think MMA is a really different thing. It's fantastic, but I think one of the things that MMA doesn't, on the surface, necessarily offer that karate and other traditional martial arts does is a lot of the philosophy, a lot of sort of the internal components of what it takes to become a really good human being. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but it's not the first thing that you necessarily hear about. And I think if I had a young kid that was, having some problems with discipline, focus, etc., I would be more inclined to stick them in karate than I would just to, let them loose in the octagon.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was a huge MMA fan when it first came out in the early 90s. The whole idea of anything goes was really an idea of Bruce Lee and Jiu-Jitsu really brought together Chinese boxing and wrestling and grappling and created Jiu-Jitsu. Over the years, MMA has evolved into another sport with a bunch of rules. So the idea that, well, MMA is the ultimate, it is the ultimate of combining those different arts into what can be successful in the cage. And don't get me wrong, these guys are amazing athletes. They train harder than anybody, going back, no matter what you say about Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan or any of these, actors that did martial arts. These guys are really training their bodies, punishing their bodies. They're getting hit. They take a lot of punishment. And they're really, really tough. I would tell you that most of these MMA guys, especially at the higher weights, you couldn't even hurt these guys because the intensity of their training. But to get back to what Sean is saying is, I like to teach my karate, Kempo. I too teach it traditionally as the way that I learned it 40 years ago with my instructor. And one of the things that it gives you is a sense of honor and tradition. And because I still look to my instructor, and I know a lot of my students look to me and appreciate the fact that we're doing something that's been passed down through generations, even though it might not work in the ring. There's a little bit more to it into seeking perfection in a series of movements, but also interlacing that with live sparring or pressure testing. So I think there's a lot of aspects to it. There is to get back to what Sean was saying about it with my kids. I have 4 kids, they all trained, but there's a couple things about the MMA that I don't like. And the first is when you have young kids, mounting each other and then doing, pounding on each other's heads. That is not good for a young kid developing. Anytime you get knocked out, you have a concussion. So multiple knockouts is multiple concussions and accumulate. So I never encourage young kids to be in a sport where they're beating on each other's heads. And then I'm just going to say this, but having watched women's MMA and then seeing like Ronda Rousey get punished and beaten to a pulp, I don't like women's MMA. I'm sorry, I don't think women should beat each other to a pulp. I don't like it, but you know they're still fantastic. Don't get me wrong, they're still great athletes. They're still at the top of their game, but I just don't personally like seeing them.
I don't like the fact that there's women that can beat me up. Any of the people that just came in a little later have any questions? Don't be shy. No more questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you, either of you, ever been in a street fight?
I have. I was with my wife. We were still very young, and it wasn't really a street fight. It was more like a gang fight, where a bunch of gang guys kind of jumped in on my wife, who was getting in an argument, and I kind of jumped in, and just like they say, I took the first shot, so I hit several people right off the bat. But then they started throwing hammers and big wheels and bicycles at me, and the cops came. So that's kind of it.
Wow. Yeah, I've been in a couple, and they all suck, and it's unfortunate, and it's nothing I'm very proud of.
And then I have one more story, which is not a street fight, but when I got my black belt, we have a pretty intensive test, which is a 4-hour test. Oh, and then one of my peers, who was training with me at the time, was resentful that I was testing before him, because he actually started with me. He took a break, I continued training, and then I was offered to test for my black belt. So in the end of our black belt test, we actually sparred. We sparred pretty hard, and he hadn't been training, but out of spite, he came to my test, and he borrowed a gi, and he said he wanted to spar, at the very end of the test. And he didn't have his mouthpiece on, or a groin cut, and he went for it, and I ended up breaking his jaw. He almost severed the top of his lip because he didn't have a mouthpiece on. I hit him in his lip, and it was cut severely. And so that's kind of an example of, going at it, if you will, but it's still not a street fight.
I actually thought of a question listening to you guys, because you obviously work very well together. What brought you together? 'Cause I mean, Karate Kid movies are obviously a long time ago. What brought you specifically?
I think that on the 30th anniversary of Karate Kid 3, the city of Los Angeles was honoring the film. They had a proclamation, and the director John Avildsen, who of course won the Oscar for Rocky, and several of the actors were there, and Darryl was there, and that's where we connected. And it's funny, we've developed a very close friendship pretty quickly. And now we're very close friends, and I think that, I can't speak for the women, but I think the guys that are involved in the Karate Kid universe, it's like you're part of a fraternity, and even if you don't see each other frequently, you've had this amazing common experience. It's an experience you've had professionally, and you also can relate to each other as to how people in the outside world and fans relate to you. So I think it forms a bond, and that's how we met.
Yeah, and I have actually a funny story, because during that event I was invited to it. And I don't consider myself a celebrity by any means, but I did get invited to this Karate Kid Day. And so I was very happy to be in attendance. And I have to admit, I hadn't seen the Karate Kid 3. So when we were all there, I'm like, who's this guy? But then we did meet, and then we did several events together where we were like here, and we hit it off. And I told him, hey, if you ever want to train, let me know. I'd be happy to teach you some this and that, and we doing stuff.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been one of the most wonderful byproducts of having been involved in the Karate Kid world.
Are you guys planning any future collaborations on anything, any projects you've got kind of on napkins on the counter?
No, I don't think so. You know,
I told you about the book that I wrote where, I would like, we've had that.
Oh, right, that's right.
But, that has not gotten the traction that maybe somebody out there funded for us. Yeah, I think outside the fact that we do train together, we'll probably have us doing stuff together.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think, guys, we're going to go back to our tables and hope we get a chance to meet some of you one-on-one there. We're going to be here until about 4:30 today, and then we fly back to Los Angeles. So, as I said, I've got copies of my book, Way of the Cobra, and if anyone wants to get some photos or merchandise or just say hello, we'd love to do so, okay? Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, and I want to just say that always love meeting Karate Kid fans. You guys have made us feel very welcome here, and appreciate it, so thank you.
And I just want to say one more thing before you leave, and that is that each and every one of you, your karate is a joke.
Woo!